Hi, I'm Darby Santiago, and today we will learn about variables and their scales of measurement. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to differentiate quantitative from qualitative data, analyze variables through the proper use and understanding of the properties of scales of measurement, and differentiate the utility and characteristics of the four scales of measurements. First, we will discuss what quantitative data is, then proceed to differentiate it from qualitative data. After that, we will touch on the scales of measurements, starting with their properties, and finally, the four types of scales. I based this lecture on the online study program of the University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia. So, why do we take time in learning all this stuff about variables and measuring them? For those who are in the business of collecting data and doing research, Ashley Crossman said that choosing the level and scale of measurement are important parts of the research design process. Why? Because they are necessary for systematized measuring and categorizing of data. This brings us to the question, what is data? How do we categorize them? What do you mean systematically measure them? A short definition is that data is a collection of measurements or observations divided into two different types, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative data is numerical. It's used to define information that can be counted, while qualitative data refers to information about qualities or information that cannot be measured. It's usually descriptive and textual. Some examples of quantitative data include distance, speed, height, length, and weight, while qualitative data include examples like someone's eye color or the type of car that people drive. In surveys, it's often used to categorize yes or no answers. It's easy to remember the difference between qualitative and quantitative data, as one refers to qualities and the other refers to quantities. For example, a bookshelf may have 100 books on its shelves and may be 100 centimeters tall. These are quantitative data points. However, the color of the bookshelf, which is red mahogany, is a qualitative data point. Quantitative or numerical data can be broken down into two types, discrete and continuous. Discrete data is a whole number that cannot be divided or broken into individual parts, fractions, or decimals. Examples of discrete data include the number of pets someone has. For one can have two dogs, but not two and a half dogs. Continuous data, on the other hand, describes values that can be broken down into different parts, units, fractions, and decimals. Continuous data points, such as height and weight, can be measured. Time can also be broken down by half a second or half an hour. Temperature is another example of continuous data. Someone can count students, tickets bought, and books, while one measures height, weight, distance, and temperature. Now moving on, let's go to qualitative data. Qualitative data describes the qualities of data points and is non-numerical. It is used to define the information and can also be further broken down into subcategories through the four scales of measurements. Scales of measurement is how variables are defined and categorized. Psychologist Stanley Stevens developed the four common scales of measurement. which are nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Each scale of measurement has properties that determine how to properly analyze the data. The properties evaluated are identity, magnitude, equal intervals, and a minimum value of 0. Identity refers to each value having a unique meaning. Magnitude means that the values have an ordered relationship to one another so that there is a specific order to the variables. Equal intervals mean that data points along the scale are equal, so the difference between data points 1 and 2 will be the same as the difference between data points 5 and 6. A minimum value of 0 means that the scale has a true 0 point. Degrees, for example, can fall below 0 and still have meaning. But if you weigh nothing, you don't exist. Each scale may have one or two or all of these properties. Let's now discuss the 4 scales of measurements in detail. Let us see how the properties of these scales of measurement and how variables are defined and categorized in each scale. The nominal scale of measurement defines the identity property of data, wherein each value has a unique meaning. This scale has characteristics but doesn't have any form of numerical meaning. The data can be placed into categories but cannot be multiplied, divided, added, or subtracted from one another. It's also not possible to measure the difference between the data points. Examples of nominal data include eye color and country of birth. Let's deepen our discussion. Nominal data can be broken down again into 3 categories: nominal with order, nominal without order, and dichotomous. Examples of nominal data with order include cold, warm, hot, and very hot. Those data that don't need order include sex categories, color of the eye or hair, the nationality, or marital status. Dichotomous data is defined by having only 2 categories or levels, such as yes or no. Okay, let's now leave nominal data and go to ordinal scale. Ordinal scale defines data that is placed in a specific order. While each value is ranked, there's no information that specifies what differentiates the categories from each other. These values can't be added to or subtracted from. An example of this kind of data would include satisfaction data points in a survey, where 1 is equal to happy, 2 is equal to neutral, and 3 is equal to unhappy. When someone finished a race also describes ordinal data, while first place, second place, or third place shows what order the runners finished, it doesn't specify how far the first place finisher was in front of the second place finisher. The third scale of measurement is the interval scale. This scale contains properties of nominal and ordered data, but the difference between data points can be quantified. This type of data shows both the order of the variables and the exact differences between the variables. They can be added to or subtracted from each other, but not multiplied or divided. For example, 40 degrees is not 20 degrees multiplied by 2. This scale is also characterized by the fact that the number 0 is an existing variable. In the ordinal scale, 0 means that the data does not exist. In the interval scale, 0 actually has a meaning. For example, if you measure 0 degrees, 0 has a temperature. Or year 0 means at the time of Christ's death. Data points on the interval scale have the same difference between them. The difference on the scale between 10 and 20 degrees is the same between 20 and 30 degrees. This scale is used to quantify the difference between variables, whereas the other two scales are used to describe qualitative values only. Other examples of interval scales include the year of a car was made or the months of a year, like those. Lastly, we go to the ratio scale. This measurement include properties from all four scales of measurement. The data is nominal and defined by an identity, can be classified in order, contains intervals, and can be broken down into exact value. Weight, height, and distance are all examples of ratio variables. Data in the ratio scale can be added, subtracted, divided, and multiplied. Ratio scales also differ from interval scales in that the scale has a true zero. The number 0 means that the data has no value point. An example of this is height or weight, as someone cannot be 0 centimeters tall or weigh 0 kilos, or be negative centimeters or negative kilo. Examples of the use of this scale are calculating shares or sales. Of all types of data on the scale of measurement, data scientists can do the most with ratio data points. In summary, scales of measurement is how variables are defined and categorized. Each scale of measurement has properties that determine how to properly analyze the data. And the properties include identity, magnitude, equal intervals, and a minimum value of 0. And to review, nominal scales are used to label or describe values. Ordinal scales are used to provide information about the specific order of the data points, mostly seen in the use of satisfaction surveys. Nominal and ordinal scales use non-numerical data and therefore can be used for qualitative data. Interval and ratio scales utilize numbers that can be broken down. Therefore, they can be considered as continuous data. The interval scale is used to understand not only the order of the data points, but also the differences between them. Ratio scales give more information about the identity, order, and difference of data points, plus a breakdown of the numerical detail within each data point. Thank you for listening. I hope this short video has been useful to you. Please feel free to share it with others.